At 4 a.m., a yellow Ford Econoline van with decals from the Ryder Rental Company left 40 Pomerano Avenue in New Jersey, trailed by a dark blue Lincoln sedan. The vehicles traveled a short way through the streets of New Jersey before stopping at a Shell gas station. Later interviews and testimony from the attendant on duty claimed that while filling up the van and sedan, he would see the three occupants of the vehicles. The driver of the blue sedan would later be identified as Mahmoud Abu Halima, and the driver of the yellow van would be identified as Mohammed Salame. The gas station attendant also claims to have seen a third individual in the passenger seat of the yellow van, who he later described as having large ears and a bulbous nose. He claimed that the tall, wiry individual left the van to pace back and forth, almost nervously, occasionally stopping to inspect the undercarriage of the van. The men paid and tipped him $2, but as they were leaving the gas station, a white New Jersey patrol car entered their view, causing the men to quickly turn around and repark their cars, claiming that the van was having problems and that they needed water from the attendant. The men had good reason to be worried. The yellow Ryder van they had been driving had been reported stolen earlier that night. Once the police cruiser passed, the red-haired man in the Lincoln motioned to the other two, who quickly slammed the hood of the van and drove away from the gas station, leaving the water from the attendant untouched. They were headed across the Hudson River, towards the skyscrapers of New York City. Later testimony claims they then traveled to a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where they were joined by a man named Ayad Ismoil, who took over driving the yellow van. Together, the two vehicles made their way to Lower Manhattan, where they descended into the parking garage of the World Trade Center. The yellow van parked at the loading dock on floor B2, next to a support column of Tower 1. Two men exited the yellow van. The passenger walked quickly to the back of the vehicle and opened it, revealing a 1,500-pound urea nitrate bomb surrounded by canisters of hydrogen. The man used a cheap cigarette lighter to light 4 long fuses, each encased with surgical tubing to prevent the smoke from leaking out of the van. Once lit, the man entered a blue sedan and the car sped up the parking deck. To their horror, the exit of the garage was blocked by a loading van stuck in traffic. The men screamed and honked for the van to get out of the way, and after a verbal altercation lasting several minutes, the vehicle was able to move and the group blended back into Manhattan traffic. At around 12:17, one of the fuses ignited the gunpowder in the Atlas Rockmaster blasting cap of the bomb, causing a chain reaction and explosion with the pressure of 150,000 pounds per square inch, ripping a crater into the bowels of the World Trade Center. Tourists as far as Ellis Island reported that they thought there had been an earthquake. 6 people were killed in the explosion, including a pregnant woman, Monica Smith, and a total of 1,042 people were injured. The explosion caused severe structural damage and flooding with the broken sewage system. The resulting car fires in the garage level released acrid smoke into the stairwells, causing panic and chaos among the desperate people who were trying to escape. Union and safety officials had tried to pressurize the stairwells during the building process of the World Trade Center to prevent this exact scenario from happening, but had been ignored. Now, to exit the building, people had to brave choking black smoke to survive. The scene was one of confusion, panic, and terror. The New York City Fire Department sent a total of 750 vehicles to the scene and did not leave for the next month. It took 2 hours to extinguish the fire and 5 hours to evacuate both buildings. In the aftermath of the bombing, initial reports came in that this had been a transformer explosion, but FBI officials quickly dismissed the notion. This had been a bomb, made by a highly skilled explosives expert. The question soon became who or what group had the sophistication to perpetrate the crime. Initial focus landed on the Balkan extremist group, Otpor, a Croatian separatist group which had conducted a murder and bombing campaign in the US in the late 1970s. However, only 2 days after the bombing, the motive soon became clear. Sharp-eyed FBI investigators found the needle in the haystack, a piece of metal with the vehicle identification number, or VIN number, of the yellow Ryder van. Even though the van had been almost vaporized by the explosion, this key piece of the puzzle somehow survived. Investigators traced the VIN number to a Ryder rental agency in New Jersey, where they learned that the van had been recently rented out by one Mohammed Salame. FBI officials ran the name through their database to find that the man had used his real name to rent the van. Files attached to him claimed that he had demonstrated on behalf of a convicted terrorist some years ago. Investigators were stunned when they also found that Salome had claimed the van had been stolen and was in the process of demanding a refund. On March 4th, 1993, Mohammed Salome walked into the Ryder Rental Agency in Jersey City, where he was greeted by employees and directed to speak with their loss prevention manager, in reality, an undercover FBI agent. After questioning, Salome, in his heavy accent, demanded several $100s, ranting about how he needed justice. After some negotiation with the agent, the sum of $200 was offered and Salome accepted, smiling. "This is, I see. This is justice," Salome exclaimed. "And what is your name?" "Bill," the agent calmly replied. "Thank you, Bill." Salome then sauntered out of the building, only to be tackled and arrested by waiting FBI agents. Using Salome's phone records, they connected him to Mohammed Abu Halima, the driver of the blue Lincoln, and Ayad Ismail, the final driver of the yellow van, as well as several others attached to the plot. Abu Halima was later caught by Egyptian authorities and brutally tortured for his connections to an Egyptian fundamentalist group, which was embroiled in an active insurgency against the Egyptian state. When he was extradited to the United States, Egyptian authorities delivered him to waiting FBI agents, completely wrapped in a cocoon of duct tape. The FBI continued its investigation, hearing rumors and whispers of another individual involved in the plot. Neighbors in Salome's apartment complex report seeing a tall, lanky man named Rashid interacting with Salome. A New Jersey storage facility notified the FBI of suspicious activities and chemical deliveries from a unit owned by a Middle Eastern man. When investigators opened the storage container, they found a makeshift laboratory filled with dangerous bomb-making chemicals and materials, matching samples taken from the World Trade Center bombing. Further investigation revealed the name of the mysterious Rashid, the alleged bomb maker and ringleader of the 1993 World Trade Center attack. His name was Ramzi Youssef, but Ramzi Youssef was not even his real name. Ramzi Youssef was born Abdul Basit Mahmoud Abdul Karim on May 20th, 1967. His father was Mohammed Abdul Karim. Not much is known about his mother, but she was likely the sister of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, chief architect of the 9/11 attacks. His father hails from Baluchistan, a region which is divided between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. Baluchistan is a wild, semi-autonomous region where clan and tribal ties override government authority, and the majority of the population adhere to a fundamentalist version of Sunni Islam. Its largest city, Quetta, is thought to be the seat of the Taliban senior leadership. Yusuf's father moved the family to Kuwait before he was born in order to seek a better life, and found work as an engineer for Kuwait Airways. Yusuf grew up in the suburbs of Kuwait City with 2, possibly 3 brothers, where his upbringing was described by one FBI investigator as slightly lower than middle class. During this time, his father began to grow increasingly radical, falling under the spell of the fundamentalist anti-Shiite mullahs, preaching a radical version of Sunni Islam called Wahhabism. A Pakistani investigator would later comment, "The guest workers were treated like dogs in Kuwait at the time. They were second-class people. Is it any wonder so many became militant?" Growing up, Yusuf was popular and charismatic, an above-average student who excelled at math, physics, and chemistry. He had many friends growing up, and some of the childhood connections he made in the outskirts of Kuwait City would later aid him in his terrorist activities. Yusuf was also described as being domineering, and his temper would flare if things did not go his way. In 1986, Yusuf's father moved the family back to Pakistan, where he obtained a visa for Yusuf from the British consulate in Karachi in order for him to continue his studies. The same year, Yusuf traveled to the UK, where he began his studies at Oxford College of Further Education, likely to study English. Later, he was admitted to the Swansea Institute to study computer-aided electrical engineering. At university, Yusuf was described by staff as being hardworking and introverted, while former students who knew him claimed he was social and enjoyed partying, womanizing, and drinking at the local pub. Then, during the summer of 1988, Yusuf decided to join the war in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. Russian forces during this time were in retreat and scheduled to leave the country by the beginning of next year. Yusuf likely did not want to miss out on the action. During his summer break, Yusuf flew back to Pakistan, where he traveled to Peshawar, a notoriously lawless city that was a hotbed for foreign Islamic fighters looking to cross the border and join the war in Afghanistan. There, Yusuf seems to have been trained at various jihadist camps in the ways of guerrilla warfare and bomb making. It seems his charisma and talents were recognized, and he quickly was able to train others using his expertise in electricity and chemistry. It was at these camps in the mountains of Pakistan that Yusuf first made introductions with Mahmoud Abu Halima, an Egyptian who had fought the Soviets for multiple years in Afghanistan. During this time, he also met and befriended Abdurrajak Abubakar Janjalani, a militant Filipino Muslim who would go on to create the terrorist organization Abu Sayyaf. In September of 1988, Yusuf traveled back to his life in the West, where he would go on to finish his education and obtain his diploma. Not much is known about the next part of Yusuf's life. At some point, he marries a distant relative of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and goes on to have 2 daughters. The marriage was unhappy, and relatives complained about Yusuf's temper and penchant for domestic violence. Later interrogations of senior Abu Sayyaf members revealed that in 1991, Yusuf traveled to the island of Basilan in the southern Philippines to train the fledgling terror group Abu Sayyaf in bomb making and manufacturing of IEDs. He was only known as the chemist due to his abilities with explosives. Eyewitness accounts place Yusuf and his childhood friend from Kuwait, Abdul Murad, there for 3 months. In 1992, Yusuf flew to the United States from Pakistan with a man named Ahmed Ajaj, a Domino's pizza delivery man from Houston who had trained under him previously in Pakistan. At the INS checkpoint at JFK Airport, Yusuf presented an Iraqi passport and requested asylum, claiming he had been persecuted by Iraqi soldiers. The INS holding center he was detained at was full, so he was released and asked to appear at an immigration hearing before a judge the next week. Yusuf never showed. Simultaneously, 30 feet away, Ahmed Ajaj was being questioned at another kiosk. The INS agent inspecting his passport noticed he had crudely pasted his photograph onto a Swedish passport. When questioned about this, Ajaj started a commotion, yelling and swearing at the agent. When his bag was inspected, the INS agent found several fake passports, bomb-making manuals, videotapes of suicide bombings, detonators, and bomb ingredients, as well as a pamphlet titled Al-Qaeda, or in English, The Foundation. One of his books had a hand-drawn diagram with 2 beakers, one labeled nitric acid and the other filtered urea. He was quickly detained. When the INS contacted the FBI and the ATF, neither organization was interested in pursuing the case. Later commentary states that Ajaj might have acted as a decoy in order to make sure Yusuf evaded detection. He was later released and his materials given back to him, but was quickly rearrested after the 1993 bombing. In New York, Yusuf met up with his old friend, Mahmoud Abu Halima, and was introduced to a Jordanian named Mohammed Salameh. Both men were working with Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, an Egyptian fundamentalist who was recruited by the CIA to preach jihad against the Soviets in America and recruit foreign Muslim fighters for the Afghan cause. He would later be arrested in connection for the murder of a prominent rabbi and a plot to bomb landmarks around New York City. Yusuf had big ideas. He established himself as the ringleader of the group and began his plot to bomb the World Trade Center. His plan was to detonate a bomb big enough to shear the support structures of one towers, toppling it into the other. Investigators claim that Yusuf also attempted to secure radioactive materials in order to make a radiological bomb, which would have made much of New York uninhabitable. He also had ideas of a poison gas attack and even considered attacking the Israeli embassy before realizing the target was too well defended. His uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was likely a source of funding. Prosecutors later found a wire transfer to Mohammed Salameh from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed for $660 a few days before the attack. Yusuf slowly created the bomb inside of a rented storage unit. This bomb was the largest in weight and damage of any improvised explosive device seen since the inception of forensic explosive identification. After its creation, Yusuf had Salameh rent a van that would carry its weight and size, and then had him reported as a stolen vehicle, giving police a fake license plate at the same time. Yusuf planned the attack for February 26, 1993. After perpetrating the attack, Yusuf fled back to Pakistan, his actions making him a star in the jihadist community. But due to Salameh's incompetence, the FBI was hot on his heels. They quickly established links with the Federal Investigation Agency, FIA, and the Inter-Service Intelligence Agency, ISI, the FBI and CIA equivalents in Pakistan, and tracked Yusuf down to a safe house in Quetta. Agents from the FIA and U.S. Diplomatic Security Services launched a raid on his location, but they found the apartment empty. Yusuf had slipped away, likely tipped off by sympathetic ISI authorities. After the raid, Yusuf fled to Peshawar, then Karachi, where wealthy jihadists lined up to sponsor his next venture. It was here in 1993 that he is likely approached to assassinate Benazir Bhutto, the leader of the Pakistan People's Party, ahead of the upcoming election. It is unknown what group sponsored Yusuf, but Bhutto had a large target on her back. A secular candidate, inspired by Margaret Thatcher, Bhutto was the leader of an opposition party that espoused economic privatization and women's rights, and condemned the ultra-conservative Islamic Democratic Alliance. The reasoning could have also been personal. Bhutto's father orchestrated a brutal crackdown in the Baluch regions of Pakistan, killing an estimated 1,000 people. Emboldened by his success in America, Yusuf went to work, recruiting a small team, including an old friend from Kuwait, Abdul Murad, who now lived in Pakistan and was at this point a trained and committed terrorist. They spent the next week planning and performing reconnaissance on Bhutto's home in Karachi. The job wouldn't be easy. Security was high, and armed guards patrolled her compound. In the early morning of late July 1993, Yusuf and his conspirators parked outside their home. Their plan was to place a remote-controlled bomb in a drain cover next to the driveway of the compound and detonate it when Bhutto left her home. Yusuf and his group were in the process of placing it in the gutter when a police patrol spotted them and questioned them. Yusuf replied that he had dropped their keys in the gutter. Not willing to help, the guards were satisfied with the answer and moved on. Spooked, Yusuf tugged and pulled on the bomb, trying to get it out of the drain cover. The aging Soviet detonator he had used exploded partially, detonating the bomb and shooting fragments of metal into his left eye, knocking him unconscious. Yusuf was dragged away to the hospital by his conspirators, and conveniently not arrested by the authorities. During his recovery, investigators claim his painful injuries made him irritable and aggressive. Interrogations of his associates at the time claim he was like a wounded animal. After partially recovering, Yusuf hatched another plan to assassinate Bhutto during a political rally using a sniper rifle. Rumors of the assassination attempt reached Bhutto's security team, and they begged her not to take the stage. She bravely ignored them and gave her speech. Nothing happened. Yusuf's sniper rifle was not delivered in time. After failing to assassinate Bhutto, Yusuf decided to shift his attention elsewhere. In late February or early March 1994, Yusuf flew from Pakistan to Thailand, connecting with local jihadists for his next plot. This move could have been influenced by the fact that the US was now airdropping matchboxes with his face and information of a $2 million reward all over Pakistan. His next target was the Israeli embassy in Bangkok, and he spent the next several weeks building a slightly modified of his World Trade Center bomb, using ammonium nitrate and oil. The day before the attack, Yusuf's group rented the services of a large six-wheeled delivery truck and strangled the driver, stuffing his body in the back along with a 1-ton bomb. On March 11th, 1994, Yusuf loaded the bomb into the truck, and an unknown conspirator drove to the Israeli embassy. On the way, the driver crashes into a taxi motorcyclist in a car, only 100 yards away from the embassy. The driver panicked and attempted to bribe the other drivers with foreign currency to keep quiet. The scene attracted a crowd, and the driver ran away, only to be arrested shortly after. When the owner of the rental company came to see the truck, he opened the back to see a decomposing body and a massive bomb linked to a detonator switch on the dashboard. Police found Yusuf's fingerprints on the bomb, and after running them through international databases, launched a massive manhunt for him. Despite this, Yusuf is able to escape back to Pakistan. Within 2 months, Yusuf is approached for another job, likely by representatives of MEK, a dissident Iranian terrorist organization. Yusuf gathers another team, including his father, who had now fully committed to the jihadist cause. Their target? The Imam Reza Shrine, described as the holiest Shiite shrine in Iran and the largest mosque in the world, containing the remains of Ali al-Rida, the 8th Imam of Shia Islam. Yusuf would use the holiest day of Shia Islam, Ashura, to ensure maximum casualties. For his plan, Yusuf created a small bomb using plastic explosives that would be easily concealable. On June 20th, 1994, an explosion rocked the women's section of the shrine, killing 25 and injuring 70. It was the worst terrorist attack in Iran to date. The aftermath saw Yusuf's father arrested by the feared Iranian secret police, never to be seen again. Now, Yusuf was a bona fide celebrity in terrorist circles. He also seems to have attracted the attention of the most prominent financier of global terror, Osama bin Laden. Representatives of bin Laden likely approached Yusuf at this time and asked him to return to a familiar land, the Philippines, in order to help Abu Sayyaf in their efforts to create an Islamic state. Later in 1994, Yusuf returned to the Philippines and travels to the south, where he goes to the secret base of Abu Sayyaf, located on the small island of Basilan. It seems that after several months spent training the militants on the island, Yusuf might have grown bored. At this time, he had developed a reputation as a playboy and a womanizer, and he likely moved to the capital of Manila in order to indulge in the nightlife. He was seen often frequenting bars, strip clubs, and karaoke parties. During his stay in Manila, representatives from Al-Qaeda traveled from Osama bin Laden's hiding place in Sudan in order to deliver a sensitive message. They had good reason for coming in person. They wanted him to assassinate American President Bill Clinton. Clinton was scheduled to stop in the Philippines on the 12th of November 1994 during a 5-day tour of Asia. Yusuf reportedly took the assignment with gusto and set about making a plan. Initially, he explored using a Stinger missile to shoot down Air Force One. He also toyed with the idea of using phosgene gas to blanket Clinton's motorcade. After realizing that security would be too tight, Yusuf decided to abandon the plan. Instead, he decided to come up with his own plot, one that was even more daring than the one that had been issued. The plan was codenamed Bojinka, and it had 3 phases. The first was to use tiny concealable bombs to simultaneously destroy 11 Boeing 747 jumbo jet airliners while in flight. The second phase was to assassinate Pope John Paul II during his visit to the Philippines. And the third was to have his old friend, Abdul Murad, load chemical weapons into a small Cessna aircraft and fly it into the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. At this point, Yusuf gets back to work. He acquired the blueprints for the Boeing 747 and calculated that the best way to destroy them is to place a small bomb under the seat over the central fuel tank. In order to do this, he would need to create a new type of bomb, one that is small enough to avoid detection, but powerful enough to bring down a 747. He succeeded. Yusuf at this time creates what he called the Mark II microbomb, using the alarm mechanism from a Casio watch, liquid nitroglycerin, hidden in contact lens solution, alongside 2 9-volt batteries, hidden in the compartments of his shoe. Yusuf created exactly what he needed. He then tested his design. Using an associate, he bombed the Greenbelt Theater in Manila. The resulting explosion only caused a few injuries, but Yusuf was happy. The timing mechanism worked exactly as planned. On December 11th, 1994, using a fake Italian passport and claiming to be an Italian member of parliament, Yusuf passed through security and boarded flight 434 from Manila to Cebu City. Before takeoff, Yusuf asked the stewardess if he could move from seat 35F to seat 26K, a more central, unoccupied seat. Halfway through the flight, Yusuf went to the bathroom and assembled his bomb. Using his watch, the nitroglycerin hidden in the contact lens case, and the batteries in his shoes, he assembled his miniature bomb. He returned from the restroom and slipped the device in the life vest under his seat. When the plane landed in Cebu City, Yusuf departed. He was replaced on seat 26K by 24-year-old engineer Haruki Ikigami. The plane continued on to Tokyo. At 11:43 a.m., the bomb exploded, almost tearing apart the young engineer, killing him shortly afterwards. The plane lost most of its steering, but due to the skills of pilot Ed Reyes, the plane was able to make an emergency landing in Okinawa. Yusuf had miscalculated. Flight 434 was using a Boeing 747-283B aircraft, a slightly modified version of the plane he had studied. However, he had plenty of proof of concept to enact his plans. He then turned to the next part of the Bojinka plot, the assassination of the Pope. He bought priestly garments, crucifixes, and pictures of Pope John Paul II so that a suicide bomber could disguise himself as a priest and approach the Pope before triggering a pipe bomb hidden underneath his clothes. On January 6, 1995, Yusuf's Bojinka plot went up in smoke. A small fire broke out in the hotel he was staying in, which overlooked the route the Pope was planning to use during his visit. Firemen responded to the incident, but Yusuf and Abdul Murad frantically told them to leave and that everything was under control. The pair left the apartment. Yusuf soon realized that he made a massive error. He left a laptop containing all of his plans, and the fire might not have destroyed it. He convinced Murad to go back and retrieve the laptop. Murad walked back into the room and was promptly arrested on the spot by police. There, police found a bomb-making laboratory, a map of the Pope's route, 4 pipe bombs, and sensitive files detailing Yusuf's Bojinka plot. They also found stolen Swansea Institute textbooks on chemistry. A sound file was also recovered on Yusuf's laptop, containing a conversation between him and an unknown woman. "Don't forget that I love you," the woman coos at him. "Shut up, you bitch," Yusuf responds. After the fire, the net begins to close on Yusuf. The entire world is looking for him, but investigators have always been one step behind, until a crucial break happens. A man named Ashtiaq Parker called the American embassy in Karachi, Pakistan, and claimed he had information on Ramzi Yusuf. Embassy officials met with him and were stunned to hear that his story checked out. A young 25-year-old South African Muslim, Parker had been recruited and mentored by Yusuf, and was supposed to have put bombs hidden in checked bags on US flights coming from Thailand, but his conscience prevailed, and at the last minute bailed out on the plan. He'd also seen the $2 million reward for Yusuf in an article in a Newsweek magazine coming back from Thailand. US investigators sprang into action and coordinated with then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, to create a Pakistan-based team of agents. Parker was able to find Yusuf in an al-Qaeda safe house in Islamabad, Pakistan, and signaled to waiting agents that Ramzi Yusuf was inside. US authorities learned their lesson from their failed raid years before, and waited until the last hour to inform the ISI. A combined team raided the safe house and swiftly arrested Yusuf, who was immediately extradited to the US. On the long plane ride back to America, Yusuf bragged about his exploits to the agents, while they secretly took notes of every detail. Yusuf was brought back to New York to stand trial, and while passing by the Twin Towers, an FBI agent reportedly removed Yusuf's blindfold and pointed to the Twin Towers. "Look, still standing," the agent said while grinning. "They wouldn't be if I had enough money," Yusuf spat back defiantly. Yusuf was tried for his crimes and sentenced to 240 years in prison. During the trial, it was noted that he tried to acquire a Casio watch and attempted to filter his own urine. His stated motives were liberation of Palestine and punishment of the United States for their support of Israel. He represents a contradiction. On one hand, a devoted jihadist, but was also not religious. During his trial, he did not observe Ramadan and did not seem bothered at all by his court-appointed lawyer, who was an Orthodox Jew and wore a yarmulke at all times. He also drank alcohol and enjoyed hedonistic pleasures. He had his attorney ask the court reporter of his trial to go on a date with him if he was acquitted. She refused. Ramzi Yusuf is still alive, and as of the making of this video, is 54. He's located in the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, where prisoners are only allowed 1 hour of solo exercise in a concrete pit, and no contact is allowed with the outside world. Every co-conspirator discussed in this video is serving a life sentence in an American prison. Yusuf's Bojinka plot would later be reformulated by his uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, to perpetrate the 9/11 attacks.